Hi, it's Joan. Today we're watching Young Royal Season 4, Episode 4. Reminder that you can find the unedited version of this reaction on my Patreon, and let's go. It's not your fault. Sorry, sweetheart. You don't deserve any of this.
Hade det här hänt mig så hade de betraktat det som ett hot mot landets säkerhet. Och du är min kille, så...
This is the awful reality I've been so afraid of them being forced to confront because they don't deserve it.
Okej, jag snackar med dem.
They should be doing something to protect him. I don't know what. I think they the royal court wants them to not be together because they don't think Simon's suitable. So hard being rich and privileged. Jesus Christ, so because you're not going to get to have an elaborate graduation, you don't care about your education. Yeah, the world is fair. It's the same for everyone. You're being very brave, Sarah. Just keep going. Just ignore her, just leave her alone. I mean, that will also be painful to her, but exactly, they're not being actively mean, they're just saying, yeah, they don't even know what happened, but you can survive this, Sarah. You know what, we should fucking succeed.
Bara för att man är för en demokratiskt vald statschef.
Okej, så du är emot monarkin?
Vad är det med mig som homofob? Eller vad är grejen?
Homofob? Nej, verkligen inte. Med det att du är kommunist. Förstår du? Eller så är det...
Like, this boy thinks he's a communist because he doesn't think the rich should just have whatever they want and get away with it and not have to pay taxes. And because he doesn't agree that if you're not rich, you should have a miserable life. Like, Simon has never said a single thing that makes me think he's a communist. Now, to be honest, my views are so left-wing. I probably do agree with a hell of a lot of communism, and the reality is that communist states that exist aren't actually communist states. They're like extreme. I mean, I don't think I'm not a communist. I don't actually know where my political ideology falls. It's definitely very left-wing though. But like, it doesn't make you a communist. And like, because Simon doesn't think that just because your mummy and daddy gave you lots of money, you should get away with everything. Like, really hate Vincent. You're not a homophobe, you're just a snob. Bully for you. Like, anybody who can decide he's not going to bother trying in his end of school exams, this was what I assumed they were taking, because we're not going to have a big celebration for graduation, because he can afford to not have an academic success. He can afford to have absolutely no qualification at the end of his schooling because mummy and daddy will pay for everything for him. Eat the fucking rich. Let's all be communists. Abolish the aristocracy. Now, I did have someone very lovely commenting on my videos, giving me a lot of information about the Swedish monarchy. I do want to say I do feel like, and I think she also agreed with me, that this show's monarchy isn't like accurately 100% the Swedish monarchy. It's kind of an amalgamation of monarchy in general. I personally see a lot of the British monarchy and how they're doing it, and also that is the monarchy I know the most about because I'm forced to suffer it. But while I do acknowledge that apparently the Swedish monarchy is actually a lot better than the British monarchy, they seem to stand for good things, they seem to be good people, so I can understand liking them. We are also in 2024. Why do we need people who happen to be born into a certain family to be given titles and bowed to and given money across? And that doesn't just apply to the monarchy, that applies to like across the aristocracy, to anybody who gets, I don't know how it works with even in the UK with the dukes and whatnot, but like they living in houses that we fund. None of that should happen. They are rich. And I don't care how rich they are, if they're not that rich compared to other rich people, they're still rich. They can still live off their money very comfortably like every other rich person does. They should just be ordinary citizens who would still be famous because they are the monarchy that once was. Like, they could still do all of their like good work and ambassadorship, but we don't need a monarchy. Monarchs these days in most countries, especially in the West, aren't politically active. In the UK, if King Charles were to say, actually Tories, you're right-wing lunatics, because they are, I'm going to stop that bill. Now, like, for instance, I don't know if anyone's, but the Rwanda bill, if you're in the UK, you know what that is. If you're not, just know the Tories are demons. It is disgusting, it is inhumane, it is awful. If I'm so used to calling him Prince, King Charles were to say, I veto that bill, it's wrong, I would support the action, but there would be an absolute crisis because the monarch can't get involved in politics. They are just some figurehead that we give money to be rich and cheat on their wives. Like, it just wouldn't happen. So while I do acknowledge and respect that the Swedish family apparently do stand for some good causes and do a lot of good work, Sweden would be just fine without them. The Swedish monarchy can't, I believe, change anything that parliament and politicians do, and there could still be people in those roles, still people acting as ambassadors, still people doing the good work. Just why should we give these people attention just because they're rich, if that makes sense? And then you have little entitled pricks like Vincent, who isn't even from the royal family, but thinks because his mummy and daddy gave him money, he's better than everybody else. When he isn't. He's actually worse than pretty much everyone but August, because August did what he did. I will never believe monarchies are acceptable. Now, I will say the Swedish monarchy seems to be one of the better monarchies, but were it to fall, which is one of the things, like, part of why I talk about, like, Sweden will be fine without the monarchy, is because, I mean, like, in this show, the Queen keeps having these huge breakdowns at Wilhelm, her 16-year-old son, about how if he can't be the king, everything will fall apart. What will happen to the monarchy? If it ended, it would just be a thing in history. Crown Prince Eric died, and Sweden realised it didn't need a monarchy. It could still be a progressive left country. Progressive, caring, kind country, you know. Like, all I hear about Sweden and Scandinavia is that it's a wonderful place to live. Like, I have nothing against it, and obviously, like, I am glad that the Swedish royal family seem like decent people. The British royal family, to a lot of them. But it's kind of, I don't know, I talk about this a lot. I do fully stand by the fact that none of these countries need monarchies. Back in the day, back when, you know, even in Victoria's day, Queen Victoria, she was a little bit more, like, she had political power, but, like, she didn't really have much. And, like, she caused a huge stir when she did things that were then seen as political, and it caused all these, almost caused revolutions. And then you go back even further to the times of, like, the autocrat kings who literally couldn't pass laws and did what they wanted. If we suddenly got rid of the monarchy then, it would have caused upheaval, but we would have got over it. I mean, look at France. Not a good example of a revolution because a lot of stuff went wrong and terrible for the people, but, you know, like, you'd still figure out a way. Like, Sweden would be fine without the monarchy, and I'm not saying revolution to them. They can keep their rich houses and their lavish lifestyles because the rich keep what they want. Like, I have no ill will against the real Swedish monarchy. Now, the fictional Swedish monarchy can go fuck themselves other than Wilhelm. I'm talking in circles, but basically it's 2024. We don't need people being born into a position that says they're better than everybody else. They get handed things. And, like, I would love it if in my life the only job I had to do was being an ambassador for some charities. What a brilliant fucking job to do. Something I believed in, something that made me happy, something that, like, I was doing good in the world. How many people wouldn't love to not have to work a 9-to-5 job, to not have to do this miserable grinding work, that, like, to not have to work in retail, or to not have to go to their office and sit at a computer for 9 to 5 and get to do that kind of work. Most people would much rather do that than whatever their job is. So, like, basically, thank you so much for your comments, and I'm really not being like, I hope I'm not offending you, because I don't want to offend you. Just, I still stand by the fact that we don't fucking need monarchs anymore in the world. The world is well beyond this weird archaic thing. I used to be someone who wanted, like, when I was like 10, like 15 years ago, so like when I was a teenager, because I love history, I used to be like, no, I want to keep the monarchy because I love the, like, the tradition of it all, and we can look at the ancestry. And now I'm like, we don't need the monarchy. What are they doing here? We still have the history. We don't need them now. Anyway, I'm so sorry that was such a long rambly rant, but I hope I got my point across. And I really wasn't trying to be offensive. Like, I'm really glad the Swedish monarchy seems better than the British monarchy. But I still just don't think we need them. And having a monarchy helps keep about that system of people with money are better than the people without. People like Vincent will look at themselves and think, oh, I'm better. I've no idea. Vincent, I'm presuming, is titled because he's part of that club that, like, the firstborn sons or whatever that they did. So I'm presuming he is a member of the aristocracy, which is why he's so personally offended. But like, just because his ancestors stole some stuff from some other people, he gets to now have all this money and privilege. Like, no one is saying all aristocrats are demons, but they shouldn't exist. Anyway, I'm very sorry. I'm very angry at him, and I just want to. I don't want to punch him in the face because I don't even want to slap him around the face because he's a child. I just want to like make him have a reality check.
Fan vad du är patetisk.
You are pathetic, Vincent. Honestly, at this point, I am team Willem becoming king and squashing all these little bitches. Suddenly, Vincent's little family isn't accepted at court anymore. They don't have any influence. No one likes them. They're kids. Oh, wait. You sent Vincent's kid is going to Alaska? My kid's not. My kid's going, like, you know. Mm-hmm. It's a fucked up system, sweetheart, and you're a delight.
Kan du det?
I mean, I will say, if Wilhelm wants to continue the monarchy and stay in it, like, will Simon be happy being with him and being married to the king or whatever, like, assuming that they stay together forever and, you know, raising the future king or queen? Like, would Simon be happy with that? Because I think this is actually a huge stumbling block in their relationship. Like, you know, I've said before, I could not date a member of the royal family, especially, like, not one that wanted to keep their titles and stuff. Like, the only way I would ever be able to date anyone that ridiculously privileged and rich would be if they had looked at themselves and realised what a sham the whole thing was and wanted to walk away. And I, as much as, like, Harry and Meghan are the best of a terrible bunch, I don't mean walk away like Harry and Meghan, where they want their kids to be princes and princesses and they want to keep their titles even though they've walked away. Like, I don't mean that kind of walk away. I mean literally just becoming John Windsor, who has a job and is no doubt independently wealthy because they all are. But yeah, I do worry that this could actually be a sticking point for them because Willem's been raised his entire life that he is the monarchy. He doesn't have an identity beyond being the prince. He's not allowed an identity beyond being the prince. He is going to be the king now. So if someone's against the royal family, he's against him. The monarchy ruins everything. Honestly, it's
Vad är det du tycker som är så bra med monarkin?
in 2024, monarchies are on their way out, I
Det är ju
hope.
Sveriges sista folket.
Enar folket.
You don't unite all the
Något som
people.
Jan-Olof. Det går att göra utan att
Agreed.
någon föds till att göra det.
I
Utan
agree.
att folket får välja.
Mm-hmm.
Och att du ville inte ens
Precisely,
sätta
it's
ditt
bad on
val.
you as well.
Vad-
I love you, Wilhelm, and I understand why you can't see this, but I am on Simon's side here. And a
Ett
burden.
straff.
Jag säger bara att
That's
jag
what he's
satt
told all his
huvudfrågan.
life. Yep. It is a burden on you, sweetheart. But also, I don't know when he's been literally raised. Oh, fucking future week right now. When he's been raised and brainwashed into this system since he was alive. Of course he's going to struggle to find his way out of it. Of course he's going to struggle to look and realize there are mistakes. And maybe the royal family does do a lot of good, but it's also just so unnecessary. And I'm with Simon on this.
Tid och författa ett brev till ert framtida jag. Det här brevet, det kommer ni att få tillbaka sen. Strax innan ni tar
Even the
studenten.
paper they do their assignments on
Det
has
här är för att
logos on it.
motivera er. Seriöst.
You don't get a choice in your future, do you, sweet sunshine? God, I'd have hated this assignment. At that age, I was already, I mean, I did not, I knew I wanted to go to university, and after that, blank space and terror. This is because you're rich and privileged and you don't need to strive for anything. Go away.
Hejdå.
August, you're the reason she fell out with everyone else she cared about. Do you think you're helping her by inserting yourself into her life?
Eller några vakter eller någonting. Alltså han har
They
fått
should.
hatbrev förut, men
Anyone who enters the royal family's
de har
orbit
kastat
and
en
is
jävla
suffering as a
sten genom hans
result.
fönster. Han är ju han kan inte ska göra allting själv.
Nej, det har beslutats här att...
Fucking hell! These people are monsters.
Månad.
You can't force him to work with
Jag
August.
kan åka över till Simon med Säpo. Så bestämmer du temat för stiftelsen.
You
Att
can't.
August närvarar.
You know what August did to him. How dare you keep asking him to tolerate August? And it's not even like August has been sorry ever since. And like, I'm like, it was the worst thing I ever did. I can't believe I did it, and groveling. Or not even groveling, but just clearly apologetic. Like, these people infuriate me so much. And I want to go to Sweden, fictional Sweden, and start a coup. Like, a peaceful coup where like the royal family are in no way harmed, but are actually just freed from the nightmare obligations they're in. How dare they try and make him be with August? And like, I know his mum is suffering, and I know that she's at the very least severely depressed. And at least, I'm not trying to say it's bad, but like what she's going through. It's her son's birthday. She should be there for it. And if the Queen isn't able to be there for it, then maybe the 16-year-old turning 17 shouldn't be forced to do it. He also lost his brother. He's also suddenly dealing with all these responsibilities he never thought he'd have to deal with. There's no one in his life he can talk to. And you're not, because
Okay,
you're
fine.
saying, oh, I'll look into Simon, but you do what I want.
Kan det ha varit de som har gjort
Almost
det här?
definite, yes.
Mot Simon?
Det är omöjligt att veta.
But you know what? It could also be a monarchist who thinks he's ruining the monarchy. The right wings tend to be monarchists because they love that kind of tradition.
Polisen tror.
And no one thinks it was a prank, surely. Like, police, regardless, someone threw a rock through their window. They didn't do that before for a prank. Were other windows, if it was a prank, it would happen to other people too. It's obviously to do with Simon, either that he's gay, that he's with the prince, all those awful things they're saying about him. How dare they say it's a prank?
Skjuts åt Simon till och från skolan. På Hillersta, där
They should have been doing this from the beginning. It's basic.
Och det är
Men sen förväntar vi oss att du också...
And there comes the thing that Wilhelm's lived with all his life. The other side.
Inga folksamlingar.
håll en låg profil helt enkelt.
Just don't live a life.
Egentligen är det bäst att du bara raderar dina konton.
Wilhelm's also not allowed a life outside of the monarchy. If that's what he's signing up to. I don't see these two getting to have a happily ever after at this point, because neither of them deserve to be trapped in this situation. See, Wilhelm's never known anything other than this hyper-controlled life. Simon's being thrust into it from the outside.
Tur. Idrott och hälsa. Det är den som ligger högst upp. Jag tror att det är den hon vill att jag väljer. Passar
quite-
in i narrativet.
Wishy-washy
De vill visa att jag är en
causes. Like,
seriös,
by that I don't mean,
smart,
like, nothing wrong with them, but what in particular? They're quite broad.
Alltså, brinner för något som betyder någonting för dig. Något som kanske har med
Yeah.
psykisk ohälsa bland unga att göra.
Mm-hmm.
Eller något om
Exactly what I thought the foundation should be.
Men det räknas som politiskt ställningstagande.
That doesn't. Fuck that.
Att älska vem man
No.
vill är en mänsklig rättighet.
Mental health and LGBT is not political. I mean, it is, but it shouldn't be.
Ställning. Bara att folk vet att jag är kär i dig.
So you've already made the statement, as Vincent apparently said. Apparently just being yourself is making a statement. Supporting that, backing that up would mean the world. Mental health also, even if he just said, okay, well, I'm not going to do it about LGBT because that's apparently political, even though it's just people being themselves. I know it is political, and I'm not belittling Wilhelm in any way. I'm belittling the world we live in, where being who you are is political. Mental health isn't political, surely. Like, he can even speak about his I mean, that's something that our royal family have done. William and Harry, and they did the whole thing about mental health, and like, they were honest about stuff, and like about their mother's death and how it affected them, and he could talk about his brother's death, you know. William, you were lovely. Our William is still an adulterous piece of shit. But like, they did a good thing with the charity one time. So like, he could do a mental health charity, and even if he doesn't want to be actually vulnerable and share like all of his mental health struggles, because no one should have to do that, he can just, people will assume you've dealt with grief. So like, he can say, even if that's as far as he goes, like, that would be enough. And then like, I hate any 16-year-old turning 17 being forced to be put on this huge pedestal. Who were you back then?
Och rätt till privatliv. Och jag vet att alla här
How have they violated
kan
your right to
sympatisera med det
privacy?
som vi 3 år går igenom
Like,
just nu.
they are I mean, you could say they're violating some rights, but
Men idag, vi kommer strejka.
we don't get a
Och vi
party,
ber
so we're
er
going on
alla
strike.
att dra in oss.
Is what this
Ni är
feels like to me.
människor som tänker att
De hackar på mig varje dag.
visa solidaritet.
Mm-hmm.
Och nu ska de demonstrera.
Ja,
Prata om...
För rättvisa.
It's okay to strike when it matters to you, isn't it?
Och vi reser oss inte för en
And he doesn't have the single brain cell to say, wow, I feel like I'm being oppressed by this school. Even though I'm privileged, I feel like I'm being oppressed. And in some ways, they aren't entirely wrong. Like, I don't think they're being oppressed, but the rules are a little bit extreme, we can all agree. So I'm striking. He can't put that same logic in place to everybody else on the planet who isn't as privileged as him.
Så du kan bara vara solidarisk när det inte kostar dig något. Snälla.
That isn't entirely what he means, but it is kind of what he's saying, and it is just heartbreaking because what he means is the royal family don't allow him to take a stand on anything that actually matters, which is stupid. Like, yes, obviously the royal family shouldn't say vote for this party because that would be bad, but they can say LGBT rights are human rights. Like, they can say people should be allowed to be who they are without it being a stand. And to be honest, it would actually really benefit the monarchy because it would really make them seem more modern and more like they actually are changing with the times. They're not just some tradition we can't shake off like a barnacle on the side of a ship. But at the same time, it is like, oh, so here, there's no danger to it, so you're going to go and do this demonstration, but you wouldn't do it for something that actually mattered if there was a risk. You know, I get where Simon's coming from in this so much, and it's really fascinating because throughout so many of their disagreements, I've been like more on, not on either side, because I think neither of them have come to any of their disagreements from a place of malice, but I've been more frustrated at Simon for not understanding Wilhelm. And this is the point where I'm like, Wilhelm, take a step back and think about what Simon's saying and think about what you're saying and what your choices are. You're not allowed to make a stand, so don't make a stand. Also, August is there, so I would say no. Choose a charity that matters, please, Wilhelm. You can do it.
Så har jag aldrig mått bättre.
I'm sorry, sweetheart. This is not healthy for someone at the slightest.
Som jag by the way inte haft någon kontakt med på flera år, även fast jag har velat. För din skull.
It hurts, but sometimes you have to say what you're feeling to someone when they've hurt you, and I'm proud of you for saying it, okay?
Kom och sitt där tills skolledningen lyssnar till våra punkter.
So striking when it works for you, it's great, but are you going to use this to think about the reality of the world for everybody else?
Så serveras det ingen middag. Och stäng skolcaféet och köket och lås dörrarna till elevhemmen.
Surely that's inhumane given that they are children. Like, surely you can't starve the children in your care as much as you might want to. Love you, sweetheart. I'm so sorry you're going through this. To be honest, how awful things are right now between them and most importantly for Simon all comes back to what August did. Because these were two kids at the beginning of a relationship and they really liked each other, they were having fun together, they were falling for each other, they were exploring where things went. They were forced to take this relationship to 11 immediately because they had to make it public. You know, no one would have made it public. Like, I feel like something that it was at the beginning of, I was going to say about the previous season, but it was at the beginning of this season, wasn't it, when Wilhelm asked about Eric and how did Eric do it, and how did Eric cope with dating at Helaska and also being Crown Prince. And he was told, well, he did it privately. He did it with the right people. Who he's doing it with isn't the issue right now. Simon didn't post about it until they were together in the public anyway. And even then, he didn't outright like tag Wilhelm and anything. Like, if it wasn't for August, they would simply be together. They would be 16, turning 17, figuring things out. Once they got to know each other more, they'd talk more. Wilhelm would talk more about his life and his experiences. Simon would talk more about his. And eventually they would get to this place where I would assume they would talk, Simon would realise, oh, so if we get together, that's going to, like, if the public find out about us, like, if we're serious and we're going to last, people will find out about us and how that's going to change things. And it could have happened more naturally. Wilhelm could have come out to his family at a time when he felt ready and empowered to do so, rather than he did feel ready and empowered when he sort of officially did it, but like the whole thing was a mess. They could have done it in a way that would have prepared both themselves and their precious fucking monarchy to survive this great period of turmoil. Like, it wouldn't have been easy because right-wing bigots exist, but it wouldn't have been this. And it's entirely August's fault. And yet, Wilhelm is constantly being told, play buddy-buddy with August. You've got to be best friends with August. Make sure no one thinks you don't like August. Simon is forced to attend the same school as August. It all comes back to what August did. And I'm so fucking happy he had to sell his father's estate that was in the family for generations. I really, really hope he is miserable about that fact for the rest of his life, and he knows it's because of what he did. That's the only consequence he's had. You just have to be an asshole every step of the way. It's so hard.
Jag swishar 200 spänn nu. Jag swishar 300.
God, these privileged kids.
Alltså, tog någon med mat? Eller?
They've never been without for a second. I do obviously think a school shouldn't take food away from kids. Like, I mean, they can say the food's in the cafeteria, so like your strike is over if you leave. You can kind of like, but surely they have a care to feed their students.
Nej, inte jag heller alltså.
First sign of hardship and consequences.
Ursäkta, men vad är det som är nice med att vara
You've got an eating disorder, August. Your eating's not healthy. Okay, everyone here, he has experience with what being extremely hungry does to you, okay? Experience. He is rich. He has never gone without a day in his life. He has an eating disorder, and someone that cares about this boy needs to do something. Sweetheart, you have an eating disorder and you've got no idea.
Det låter som en ätstörning.
Yep.
Verkligen.
Oh,
Ja, ja, nu får det fan bli...
Simon actually said that with like concern, you know? Like he was concerned. Like that sounds like an eating disorder. Not something you laugh at. It's true. And the fact that August has experienced this despite never going without in his life. That sounds like an eating disorder. Think about that and get help.
Och tog prefektuppdraget från mig.
På riktigt?
Ja.
You did?
Alltså, på riktigt. Det blir fan bara tråkigt.
I mean, I am worried about August's mental health, but I need him to get it taken care of away from here.
Vi är olika.
And that's okay.
Vi tycker olika.
That's healthy to be different. To feel comfortable expressing those differences. You just have to
Ska inte det vara en bra
be
grej?
willing to come together and compromise and learn from each other. You're 16 and that's hard to do.
Vi kompletterar varandra och lär oss av varandra.
It is so long as you do learn from each other. Not fully expect it to go one way.
Lär du dig saker?
Yeah, things have really changed.
Så det här har ju spårat.
Yeah, this is really... That article, what it said about the school. She told the truth about what this school does. She told the truth. You're more concerned about yourselves than your friend feeling like that. It's an unusual place to sleep, but it was away from everybody else, so it's got its benefits. They got to have a sleepover.
Ni får tillbaka era mobiltelefoner.
Yes!
Men de får endast användas utan...
That is reasonable.
Vänta.
Ja, studentmiddag.
Hur blir det med den?
Ja. Den slänger vi också på. Okej? Då så.
This was what you should have done from the beginning.
Svälten är slut.
The rich kids get what they want again. Although their phones make sense in non-school hours and they need to talk.
Att du önskar att du kommer må okej och inget mer.
Det är som min första riktiga vän.
In some ways you were her first real friend too. I mean, they're not all awful, and the one she used to share a room with was a good friend, but hate how isolated and alone she feels.
Det om vad hovet tycker.
Ja, sen jag insåg vad det innebär att vara
Ja.
tillsammans med en av dem och köra på det här nu. Och bara göra som hon säger.
I mean, try it and see how you feel.
Sån stor grej. Eller?
It is awful that he's been forced to isolate her like that, but
Vi vill väl bara inte att du raderar dig själv.
it's not healthy. I guess experiment, see how it goes.
Inte ens han tog dig seriöst.
Du, jag älskade Erik.
Du kände
If you loved Eric, you wouldn't have destroyed his little brother.
Erik.
Or throwing back at him that you didn't know Eric, that he said to
Han hade
him.
hatat dig om han
Yep.
visste vad du gjorde mot dig.
That is the truth. The truth.
Jag säkert att du kände Erik.
Of course he didn't. He was his little brother.
Det gjorde jag visst. Jag var ju för fan hans bror.
You were his baby brother. He wouldn't have told you everything.
Som du inte är. Allt
You
som du inte klarar
idolized him,
av.
and that's how little brothers should think about their big brothers when they're little.
Invigningen. Den som du skrev om i tidningarna.
Did Eric do it?
Vår klass. Erik var där.
I'm sorry, Wilhelm. He wasn't perfect. He was
Ja,
disgusting.
var asgarvade. Det var allvarliga.
Barbaric and awful.
Var där.
I'm sorry he has to find out about Eric like this. His brother wasn't perfect because
Erik var där.
ideally Eric would have lived and they'd have both grown up and he'd have got to know the adult Eric when he was also adult and he'd have realised he was shit. And when I say he was shit, I don't actually, I mean like, he wasn't perfect, that he did awful things and made awful mistakes. So yes, Eric has done some things that are very unlikable. We don't necessarily like Eric. He was a good brother. Is it essential for you to destroy Wilhelm's opinion of his dead brother? I don't think so. Maybe you should talk to somebody else about the fact that it happened, not him. It also doesn't excuse what you did, August. Not even slightly. How do you even begin to process that this brother you looked up to and you idolized and you thought was everything good and everything that everyone should be was actually not great, would actually take part in something as awful as that? And you know, there's the excuses, and when I say excuses, I'm not excusing anyone who has ever done what Eric did and that whole group of boys, of it obviously would have happened to them. I'm assuming it was something that happened every year and it kept happening. If it was something they introduced, they are the absolute scum of the earth and need to just, I'm glad Eric's dead. Glad, like, I mean, not actually glad, but you know what I mean. Now, if it is something that happened to them and they were doing the tradition, still makes them scum. It really does. I'm not saying like, oh, that makes it all okay, it happened to them, the poor babies. But I am saying that like, it's the tradition. A lot of what August and his crew did in the initiation we saw with Wilhelm, I think was inhumane. Now, there is what Eric did in the initiation and there is what August did in the initiation. They are both bad. One is worse, Eric. But this is a normal initiation. You can't even see it on the screen. Initiation, if you have to have one, make it fun. Make it a bit of a laugh. Make it a bit silly if you have to. Camaraderie boosting, not soul destroying. And I actually feel like what they did to Wilhelm, I struggle to watch that scene because it's so awful. It's just what they're doing is just disgusting. So it is obviously awful to know that they did something worse, and a credit to them that they stopped that something worse from happening to other children because they were children. Does it make me look differently at Eric? Obviously, yes. But I think it is exactly that thing of Hilarska. Like when I heard about it in the paper, when the story broke, I immediately believed that it had happened because of course it had happened. This school is morally bankrupt and is creating a breeding ground for the privileged pricks to become even more privileged pricks. It breaks my heart that it happened to August and Nils and the rest, and Vincent even, and the rest of them, because they're still kids now and they were definitely kids then. But it doesn't, oh, now I understand why you did it, August. You know, it's heartbreaking in so many ways. It's heartbreaking to think of how desperate August was for Eric's attention and for Eric to love him. It's heartbreaking to think of how when Eric was bringing Wilhelm and August was so excited to see him and give him a huge hug, and you know, it almost makes you think, like, did a part of him do what he did to Wilhelm to hurt Eric? Even though Eric was dead and Wilhelm was completely innocent of that whole thing. Like, I think if Vincent was in a different class, Vincent would have done it. If that makes, like, I think some of their third years, if they had been with a different cohort of boys, would have done it. I don't see Vincent as someone who would stop, because he would think, oh, it's just a joke, oh, it's good fun, oh, we didn't mean anything by it, oh, it's not homophobic. The way Vincent is and the way he's been acting, he 100%, if he was part of Eric's class, would have been there laughing along. August, I think if he didn't have anybody else speaking out against it, would have been there laughing again, internally hating it and thinking it wasn't good, because I don't think August is actually like evil, as I've said before. What he did was evil, but he probably would have gone along with it because he's so desperate to be liked and accepted and peer pressure. But I think it was this group of boys that were able to stop the worst of the initiation. But it breaks my heart that he told Wilhelm at all. And like, I'm so like, genuinely, there's a part of me that's almost like Wilhelm deserves to know the truth about his brother, the good and the bad. Maybe it will help him in a way process the feeling of inadequacy, you know, like his mother like saying, oh, everyone's always going to be comparing you to Eric, oh, everyone's comparing you to Eric, and Wilhelm's like, that's always been the case. There's real, like he's maybe always seen his big brother as somebody that it would be impossible to ever be as good as, that it would be impossible to emulate and impossible to replace in like to fill the shoes of, is what I mean, because obviously he doesn't want to replace his brother, even if his brother was a dick. It's like he could never live up to what his brother stood for, and now he's realizing that actually that brother was not great and was actually would do some terrible things, and we know at least he did at least one terrible incident. Someone did also point out to me that I've been just casually referring to Eric as being drunk driving and that'd been what killed him, and that was never confirmed. I think I always just assumed it was that kind of like privileged rich boy, like speeding along a road, having drunk something, feeling reckless and feeling like they're invincible, and that's what caused the death. Obviously, it could have been entirely not Eric's fault, the accident. We genuinely don't know. We just know he was driving. But that's kind of just my assumption of what had happened, was that he maybe had a bit too much to drink, was driving, no matter what, was driving recklessly and kind of caused his own death. And not in like a, so he deserved it kind of way, but more in a, that is the way that when you raise kids to believe they're untouchable, they're going to think they're untouchable when they're not. But back to this. Eric not being a perfect person, it makes sense. And like, I don't mean that like as in I always knew he was a bad one. I mean, when you look at how toxic the royal family is, how toxic the royal court is, how toxic Hilerska is, the environment they're in, the privilege, the way Vincent talks and acts, the way everyone else just sits there and looks as he does it, like this whole environment they're in is very toxic, and like I wouldn't want my child to be at that school. I can see Eric being sucked into that world. I mean, even the club that they made Wilhelm, well, they invited Wilhelm to when he was grieving his brother, their like firstborn sons, yeah, is toxic. Like, that's the world Eric was in, and so he just perpetuated it, and was part of it. And obviously it's going to shake the very foundations of the world Wilhelm has. And why I am angry in particular at August for telling him is because the time and the place, you know? It wasn't done because I really want to make, like, you deserve to know the truth about your brother, you deserve to know him. It wasn't done in a, stop beating yourself up about not being as good as him because you're better, or because, like, this is what you're trying to live up to, so therefore, like, don't even worry about that, just do your own path. It wasn't done in a kind of, I want to share this burden that I've been carrying with somebody. It was done in a, you didn't know your brother, he was awful, you'd have hated, like, you know, it was done to hurt him. And I do think the delivery of like recounting the story was brilliant. Like, when I hate on August, it is never the actor is brilliant. Like, I think as he was retelling the story, it was the first time he'd put into words what had happened since it happened, and I do think he felt what he was saying, and maybe after he'd said it was kind of like, oh, I just said that to Eric's brother who's grieving his death, because I think in some ways it is important that Wilhelm is able to know that his brother wasn't perfect, but he's also grieving his brother. His brother is dead. He can't go and confront him. How could you do that? How could you treat people like that? He can't do anything with his information, but just sit there having it like a stone in his heart that his brother he once idolized wasn't perfect, and he'll never get to speak to Eric. He'll never get to ask Eric about it and have Eric say, I regretted it after I did it, like I was just trying to fit in. He'll never get to hear Eric say, oh yeah, it was a joke, brush it off. You know, whatever Eric's, like, those are kind of, in my opinion, the extremes of how Eric would respond. Absolute remorse. It's been eating him up inside. or what the fuck, it was just a bit of fun, what you want about? Like, a kind of the extremes of dealing with the situation. He'll never know where Eric actually came in that, whether the brother he thought he knew was entirely a lie, or whether the brother he thought he knew was the right person, he just succumbed to peer pressure at times. And again, those are the two extremes of the situation, because Wilhelm will never get to know those things unless Eric kept a secret diary somewhere that no one has found yet, where he wrote down his innermost thoughts. And so that's why it's so upsetting to me that he would put this on Wilhelm. Wilhelm's already going through all this stuff. In the very long run, it might help free him a little bit from those expectations, but that wasn't why August was saying it. August was saying it like, see, your perfect brother wasn't that perfect after all. You think I'm a bad person, well, so was your brother, the brother you idolize, who is dead. Like, it just was someone, it was done to hurt him. It was done to win the argument. It wasn't done to unburden himself, and it wasn't done to help Wilhelm or to be honest and truthful. It was done to win the argument, and that's why I'm furious with him for doing it. There could have been a time and a place for that story to be shared in a way that would be just sharing the truth without this particular situation. And because something bad happened to August doesn't excuse him then doing something bad to somebody else. That's not the way it works. Like, if now Wilhelm were to go and treat someone, I don't know, when Wilhelm's a second year, third year, go treat a first year abysmally because, well, when I was a first year, someone leaked a sex tape of me and outed me to the world. I wouldn't be happy with him either. Like, it doesn't excuse shitty behaviour. Being mistreated doesn't excuse behaviour further on. In the same way that if it did happen to Eric and his cohort and then they decided to continue the tradition, also doesn't excuse them. So it really frustrated me because August is just so fucking frustrating. I need him to leave Halaska and get mental health help. Like, away from me, because I am very worried about this boy. He is losing all of his friends. He's losing his grip on everything. Once he leaves this school, all he's going to have is being the spare to a royal family, knowing that every single member of that establishment would really rather it wasn't him, knowing that if things go the way the royal family wants, Wilhelm will be the one to become king, and therefore August will have no place in the world. Like, I worry about his mental health. It's the consequences of his own actions in some parts, and then in other parts it's obviously things that have happened to him. And did that incident trigger his eating disorder, or was the eating disorder something that was already with him? So it really just frustrated me because he was just saying that story to hurt Wilhelm. And one of the things Wilhelm has been clinging to has been his brother and the memory of how much his brother loved him. There is that other part of me that does wonder if this will in some ways help free Wilhelm from this impossible high standard of being Eric's replacement. How can I possibly live up to Eric? And now he can realize that actually it would be very easy for me to live up to Eric. Eric wasn't all that. Or at the very least, Eric made mistakes. Eric wasn't perfect, and hopefully that will help him in his journey. But that wasn't the reason August told him this story. That was August was telling him the story to hurt him. So, I'll start with August. August needs to just stay away from Sarah. I know he cares about her. I know he's in love with her and whatnot. But, like, being with him destroyed Sarah's life. Why should he needs to stay away from her? If she chooses him, if she wants to be with him, she will approach him. You've made it clear you're interested. Let her figure out her stuff. The other huge thing with August in this episode was obviously him in intimate detail describing his eating disorder to a crowd of kids who sat there in silence like, what? And then Simon saying, seriously, like, that sounds like an eating disorder, with concern. And then all of August's friends going, yeah, it does, an eating disorder. Oh, I hope my head will go blank. And just laughing it off. Moving on. Because if a boy who has never gone without a day in his life, in terms of material comforts, food, you know, obviously, like, he's gone without parental love and things, but in terms of, like, having enough to eat, has never gone without a day in his life, he shouldn't have an intimate understanding of what hunger does to you. I don't have that kind of understanding of what hunger has done to me, and I'm nowhere near as wealthy as him. Like, there is no reason for August to have that understanding unless there is an eating disorder. And so it made me angry at his friends that they laughed it off. I hope... Okay, I'm calling him Nils. If Nils isn't the one that's gay, then tell me in the comments, because you know me and names, my brain fog does not like them. He is the one person who I think, even though he didn't tell Vincent to shut the fuck up, is the one person that's kind of on August's side and is kind of seeing August's side of things. I hope he at least follows up on that and is like, hey, do you want to talk about your eating at all? But I think that was the first time anybody had put into words to August's face that sounds like an eating disorder. And I did think you saw him sitting there going, that's not normal. Because I think when you've lived a certain way from a young age, and you just assume everybody experiences what you do, you don't realize what you're experiencing is abnormal, it can be really like, oh, when you realize it's not. That's part of why awareness is so important of all these different things, whether it's being neurodivergent, whether it's eating disorders and actual like health issues, because you can think your experience of the world is normal and how it's supposed to be, and that, you know, yeah, everyone gets hungry a lot of the time and starves themselves. And then when you stop and realize, wait, that isn't a universal experience, I am different, you can either have a better understanding of yourself in some cases, or in this case, realize something is wrong and maybe seek help. You know, that conversation might be the beginning of August one day seeking help for his eating disorder, because he does need to. I don't like him because he's made some terrible choices and run from them, but he does need help, and I do worry about him. Then you had him just rightly calling Vincent out, because Vincent did steal the prefectness from him, knowing it was everything that mattered to August. It didn't really take Wilhelm any effort to get Vincent to do that. Vincent just did it. And then he got all like attacking August and being like, everyone here knows your socks. Like, everyone, after the eating disorder conversation, like, fuck Vincent. Like, the best thing you can say about Vincent is I don't think he'd have leaked a sex tape of 2 of his classmates onto the press and outed them. That is the only good thing you can say about Vincent. Like, August was then completely isolated from his friends, and even people like Nils didn't follow him over there, which suggests he agreed. He didn't back him up, which to August at least will suggest he agrees. So I do kind of worry about August at the moment. I hope he starts to seek help for his mental health. I hope he continues to see the counsellor in private, because he really fucking needs to. There is a part of me that is mad that the school doesn't know August leaked the tape, because I think they would treat him. I would be interested in seeing how these characters dealt with him knowing it was him. Where Vincent, Nils in particular, like his friends, how were they like, oh, good one, lad? Or if they were like, you did what? And just completely cut him off. I would be very interested to see their reactions, but obviously if people in the school knew about it, then the press would know about it, and the whole point is to keep it out of the press. Okay. Vincent can just go in the trash. Like, I think their school rules that were imposed were way too harsh. And I think the ones that have now been put in place make sense. But his little, like, oh my god, you're gonna go demonstrate, Simon? Pathetic. Let's go demonstrate. And then, like, wait, like, we didn't immediately get what we wanted? This is so awful. Like, it just really, and the fact that they did actually get what they wanted with very minimal fuss, which just shows you how being rich and having privilege always wins the day. Sarah was very brave in coming back to this school, knowing that she wouldn't have friends, and like at the best she wouldn't have friends, at the worst those girls could have gone mean girl on her and been like, oh my god, it's Sarah, isn't she pathetic, we hate her. Like, I mean, I don't think they're horrible people, but it would be very easy to feel like you're defending your friend by tearing someone else down. It's not right, but teenagers. So I am proud of her for coming back to the school, and for when Felice gave her the chance to talk, for saying what she said. I think being with her dad has really benefited her. She has learned a lot about forgiveness, both in herself and her own capacity to whether or not she can forgive, and how hard that may be when someone's hurt you, and in how to approach other people who you have hurt. I really respected her for how she spoke in that conversation, and accepting that Felice may never forgive her, but that, like, she is still sorry. And I think right now Felice needs her as a friend so desperately, but is still so, I couldn't trust Sarah if I knew what she'd done. You know, like, if one of my friends got with somebody who had done something like that to their sibling, I would really doubt what kind of a person they were. So she's in a tricky position, because also her friends have made it very clear they don't understand her, they don't support her. She's clearly struggling. Being at this school is clearly not healthy for her right now. And they're like, wait, what? You ruined our perfect time to have parties whenever we wanted at school? How could you? And even her friend that was her roommate, who she's closest to, didn't back her up beyond saying, well, if they would take action on it, they would have done it by now if they were concerned. She didn't say Felice did nothing wrong. She said, oh, well, if Felice worried, then they didn't do anything. I worry for these characters because they're also isolated in so many different ways. But I was very proud of Sarah. I also think it's important that Simon was able to tell Sarah how he was feeling, the struggles he's going through at home, how he's alone with it, and to say to her face, I wanted to see our dad, but I didn't because of you. because I think it's important to just be honest with people when they've hurt you. Let them know what they've done. They can't make amends if they don't know what they've done. They can't understand why you're angry with them if you just don't tell them why you're angry with them. So I thought that was also another important scene. The whole striking thing, good example of why strikes are effective, but also an example of how those with privilege get what they want very easily compared to those without. Like, you know, a different group of kids would not have been given what they wanted as a result of that strike. When ordinary people strike, often the people that they are striking against do everything they can to undermine said strike. But yes, I mean, I'm glad they have their phones back, because I think keeping their phones off them outside of school hours was nonsense. Keeping them inside of school hours makes sense, like not having them. And not having any kind of graduation, they deserve the basic school traditions of a graduation. I don't know entirely what Swedish traditional graduations are like and what kind of they're missing, but they deserve like the ordinary stuff. They don't necessarily deserve a huge rager in the woods, but they deserve something. Then we come to our boys, and oof, I honestly right now it's really hard, but I don't see their relationship working out, and it's breaking my heart, because these are just two kids who love each other, who in any other world would be able to just figure out their relationship by themselves. They wouldn't need to deal with all this outside pressure, because that's what's killing them. It's the world that's killing their relationship. I thought it was actually very interesting to have that point in the conversation about Simon actually not thinking there should be a monarchy, and Wilhelm being like, but that's all I am. And then in some ways Simon being like, well no, I can still like you and not like the monarchy. The monarchy destroys. And also, I think if I got to know Wilhelm, and me getting to know Wilhelm in the show, that would make me hate the monarchy even more, because I see what it's doing to him. And as heartbreaking as it is, I think it is good for the long-term relationship prospects slash ending their relationship, or figuring out whether or not they're going to be able to have a relationship. It is good that Simon is seeing the reality of what it is like to be with one of them, as he put it. How you have to live your life, the rules you have that no one else has, the ridiculous scrutiny and pressure, and how it can crush you. And I'm not saying, yay, Simon's being crushed. Of course not. I hate it. But I do think that, like, this was what I've been worrying about for 2.5 seasons. Well, 2 seasons really, because all season he's been dealing with it. Was him not being aware of the pressures that Wilhelm was under and what those would be like if they were together. And I think maybe it's good for him to try, see if he can cope with living up to all of these ridiculous like expectations and rules and requirements you have to go through. Can he be happy? Is being with Wilhelm, the boy he loves, enough to make giving up everything else? And I think that's a personal choice that everyone has to go through, and he needs to experience it for himself. He's also 16, turning 17 at some point. I currently, and I hate myself for saying it, almost feel like they should break up. They shouldn't be together right now, because it's just not healthy for Simon. He's 16 years old. He shouldn't be going through any of this. Wilhelm shouldn't be either, but it's his family. He can't escape them. Like, Simon shouldn't be put under this kind of pressure and being told you can't go on social media and you can't do anything. And if they were to break up, that media presence would never completely go away, like some of the evil people, but in general it would die down and he would get more of his life back. But these two boys love each other so much. They bring out the best in each other. They inspire each other. And it's so heartbreaking to say that. It also breaks my heart to say that, because I think if they break up, it will destroy Wilhelm. And he's already drowning under so many things. That's the last thing he needs. But I just feel like they are so young to be going through all of this. And I hate that the world has put them through this. And as I said during my reaction, August has put them through this. August created this situation. August made this situation happen. It would have happened in some form or another, but August made it happen when they were babies, and it made it happen before they were even remotely prepared for it. I hate seeing Simon like this. He's the most lifeless he's looked all. Like, there are obviously times where he has a spark in his eyes, but he just looks so defeated, and he is like he's deleting himself. He's removing himself. And no one should have to do that to be in a relationship. Yet another reason why we shouldn't have monarchies. But it's just heartbreaking, and I want them to find a way through this. I really do. And I really hope that their love will be enough. But I also think at 16, that's very young to be making that kind of decision of being like, I'm in love and I'm going to base my whole life around the person I love. Like, that is very young to make that kind of commitment. It doesn't mean you can't be with the person you love at 16, of course, and be with them forever. Of course you can, but the level of sacrifices are so wrong. It's also why it's wrong that, as was pointed out in this episode, Wilhelm doesn't have a choice about his future, and that is disgusting and wrong. But I just feel like we're headed for a tragedy in terms of their relationship, and it makes me really sad because they deserve to be at this age exploring their feelings for each other and their relationship. Simon, I mean, having your home attacked, not being safe in your own home is awful. The royal court should have had bodyguards, some kind of security, some kind of protection on them from the very fucking time their relationship went public. But I'm glad they finally are doing that now. It broke my heart to hear Simon casually discussing how Wilhelm's parents were going to be at his birthday dinner, because they're not going to be, right? Like, that's the whole reason August has to be there, is because there has to be a lot of royal family support, because it's his birthday. The parents should be there. You've lost one child. Your other child is having a birthday. You should be there for it, especially if it's not even a hugely mediaized thing. It's a like court photographer who won't take a picture of you crying in the corner if you need to go and cry in the corner. You know, like, it breaks my heart for Wilhelm that he is both an afterthought to his family, but also a prop that they need to do what they want to do. I hope he contacts Fatima and says, I want to do a campaign on LGBT, I want to do a campaign on mental health, something like that, and doesn't just say, oh, whatever you want me to do, sports and health. Because sports and health obviously is important. I'm not saying it isn't, but it's such a wishy-washy non-entity of a cause. Like, sports and health. What sports? What health? There already are so many charities to that kind of thing, so many government programs promoting that. Whereas mental health and safety for people who are LGBT would be so important as well. And I feel like in general, the one that I think really calls to me when I look at Wilhelm is mental health, because of what he's gone through, but he's also in the middle of going through his mental health. Like, I don't know. I hope he picks a cause that matters to him, and that in some way this stupid student protest has helped promote that idea in him. I hate how much the court is putting on him. He's turning 17, for God's sake. He's a child. No one should be given that kind of position, and no one should be told what their future is from birth. It's ridiculous. And you know, when Wilhelm was defending the monarchy and how he doesn't have a future, he was saying, well, it's of his own choice. He said it's a privilege. But then he doesn't want to use that privilege to do any actual good in the world, aka doing a charity that matters. And again, this is no hate towards him. He's almost 17. He is very young. He is dealing with the pressures and expectations, and he is thinking, I've already caused my mother and the royal court so much hassle. If I were to say, I want to do a charity that matters to me, I'm going to do an LGBT rights charity, my mother will have a heart attack and die, and it'll be my fault. You know, that's where his head is at. His head is not at a place where he feels like he is loved and supported and is going to be given the opportunity to do what matters to him. He is doing this charity for damage control, which is just, it's just a mess. And so when I'm criticizing him here, it is with love and understanding, as it has been with Simon and Wilhelm throughout this entire show. And it just breaks my heart for both of these boys and what they're going through. And I just want to give them both hugs and whisk them away from this situation to safety. And I can't do that. There's 2 episodes left in this show. I have literally no idea where this is, where, why. I feel like I talked in more depth about August than Wilhelm and Simon, and that makes me angry, but I also feel like I angry at myself, but I feel like I talked about them during the reaction, and they break my heart. I'm worried they're not going in a healthy direction. Oops, sorry. I was fiddling with an old driver's license and I snapped it. Ignore me. Because I'm anxious, I was fiddling. They break my heart. They deserve so much better than what the world has given them, and I'm really worried. We're really worried with where this show is going to go in 2 episodes. But yes, my thoughts are just becoming a muddle of they break my heart over and over again, and I think I've repeated myself enough in these reactions. Reminder that you can find the unedited version of this reaction on my Patreon, and thank you so much for watching.